Canada, the land of beautiful scenery, BBL Drizzy, Brampton drivers, some hockey teams that make it to the playoffs and then choke, and the home of, well, no homes right now because we're in a housing crisis. Nobody can afford shit. Canada is definitely one of the countries of all time. I really don't know what to say about it these days. We're crazy, we're corrupt, but that's beside the point. As most of you know, Canadian Confederation was on July 1st, 1867. July 1st, 1967 marked a whole century since the country was officially formed. Over the span of 100 years, so many things had happened in the country. From more provinces and territories joining the country in the 1870s, to the completion of the historic Transcontinental Canadian Pacific Railway in 1885, the Maple Leafs joining the NHL in 1917, and the Beatles' first Canadian visit in 1964 right here at the Winnipeg Airport for literally 22 minutes and then they left. To celebrate the centennial of a great nation, a train ran a 5,900-kilometer journey across the Great White North. This is the 1967 Confederation train. Plans for the train can be traced back to around 1961. Prime Minister John Diefenbaker, among others involved with the creation, had envisioned a train displaying the history of the country from prehistoric times to 1967 on display for the public to see across the entire country. In 1962, the Centennial Committee, led by John Fisher, commissioned the train. By 1963, talks between Canadian Pacific CEO Norris Buck Crump and Canadian National Railway CEO Donald Gordon happened, and eventually, the train got the clear signal to happen for the Centennial celebration. Apparently, during the planning stage, a steam-powered heavyweight consist was considered. It never got past that stage, of course. One could only imagine what steam engine or steam engines would have pulled the train. Most were long gone by even 1962-63, but a handful were still sitting around in deadlines waiting to be preserved, best case scenario, or alternatively scrapped. By late 1966, the full consist had been picked from the two railways. The consist included two diesel locomotives, those being GMD-built FP9As, a steam generator car, another generator car, a baggage car, a handful of sleeper cars, and a diner car. The locomotives were to be numbered 1867 and 1967. FP9A 1867 was built in 1954 as CPR 1411. FP9A 1967 was also built in 1954, the only difference is that this was CN 6509. CN's steam generator car 15463 was built sometime in the late 50s by CCNF, or CanCar of Montreal. The named passenger cars used were Oak, Ash, and Fir Grove.
On the first day of Christmas, my true love gave to me a beer.
Now, the train had a very eye-catching two-tone purple design. It was created by two graphic designers, Peter Vincent from the UK and John Arnold from Canada. The triangles on the exhibit cars were meant to replicate the Expo 67 logo designed by Toronto man Stuart Ash, a triangular take on the maple leaf symbol synonymous with Canuck culture. Here's a couple photos from CP Rail's employee magazine Spanner of paintwork being done on some of the cars. The interior exhibits were designed to take the public through time from before Confederation to the 1960s. Car 1 focused on indigenous culture before Europeans found the New World and brought their silly chicken pox and guns and shit like that. Car 2 focused on the aforementioned pioneers coming to their new homes in a new world. Car 3 focused on Canada as a country in times before Confederation, like when Canada was a province. That's trippy. The province we all know today as Ontario was at one point known as Canada. No wonder why they think they're the center of the country. Car 4 was focused on the country between 1867 and 1900, and all the things that happened between then. Car 5 focused on the early 20th century, around the time of the First World War. And finally, Car 6 was focused on the era between the Second World War and the centennial year of 1967. The lead locomotive, 1867, was equipped with multiple Nathan airchime horns that were tuned in sequence to play the opening notes to O Canada. I'm not sure what models of horns they were. One sounded like an M3, a common horn on older Canadian locomotives, but I'm not sure of the others. And so, on January 1st, the Canadian Governor-General's wife, Pauline Vanier, launched the train, so to speak, and sent it off on its Trans-Canada journey. Except for Newfoundland, sorry guys.
Hello everyone, this is Cal Unit Productions here, and I am glad to be here on the Winnipeg Railfans channel. So, yeah, great to be back. Should have a video covering my tour soon, whatever. Anyways, let's go. Here it is, okay. Alright. The tour was pretty much a year-long experience visiting 9 of the 10 provinces. Officially starting off on January 1st, dead heading west on the back of CN's train number 3, the Super C, or Supercontinental west to Winnipeg, where it switched to CPR trackage to continue west by itself to Vancouver, and across the water to Victoria on Van Island. The train went through BC in early January to the end of February, Alberta in early to mid-March, and Saskatchewan in the later half of March going into April. Manitobians saw the train throughout the rest of April and early May, and after that the longest leg of the trip occurred with the train visiting all over Ontario from May to July, making a stop at the country's capital of Ottawa on July 1st, 1967. The train hit up Quebec throughout all of August and September. During October, it stopped in the maritime provinces of New Brunswick, Nova Scotia, and surprisingly, it was loaded onto a ferry and stopped in Prince Edward Island. Its final stop was at Canadian Pacific's Windsor Station on December 5th. It is mentioned earlier that it didn't visit Newfoundland. The only reason why was because the NFLD railway tracks on the island were narrow gauge. In total, the train ran 316 days out of the year and stopped in 65 communities across the country, with millions of visitors coming to see the fascinating train both inside and out. The total cost of the train in 1967 was 1.5 million Canadian dollars, which adjusted for inflation in 2024 would be $19,378,010.28. Wow! With that kind of money, you could buy stuff off the following list of things. It says on the screen. What the fuck? Anyways, yeah, my part here's done. I'm getting back to work on my own video. Make sure to check that out on my channel if you haven't. Bye.
So let's fast forward to 1968. What happened to the train after the very eventful previous year? Well, all the equipment was returned to service with their respective railways. Plain and simple. The engines and cars were repainted back into the railway's then current paint schemes, CP's maroon and CN's black and white. I'm sure the locomotives are what people are most interested in, so starting off with Unit 1867, it was returned to the CP in their maroon gray script letter scheme, rather than the block letter scheme it had in 66, and was renumbered back to 1411. The unit served on CP Rail passenger trains with the new multi-mark action red look throughout the very late 60s and throughout the 70s until the creation of VIA, who, as we all know, took over CN and CP's passenger trains. Sadly, it was scrapped sometime in the late 80s as VIA 1411. 1967 was returned to CN as their 6509, which, similarly to 1411, served on its respective railway until the creation of VIA, where it was repainted into their original blue livery. It was overhauled in 1984 at CN's Point St. Charles shop and renumbered to 6304. It was surprisingly one of the last FP9 ARMs used on VIA when it was finally retired and sold off around 2002. 6304 wore a Southern Pacific paint job for years during the 2000s, pulling private railcar excursions across the states. 6304 eventually was bought by private owners and repainted into CN's Maple Leaf scheme, and as of now, is in Saskatchewan for a soon-to-be up-and-running excursion railway, along with some other F units. Viewers from the Midwest US might recognize this F9A B set from the Keokuk Junction Railway. The passenger cars are a little harder to keep tabs on. I'm sure most were scrapped, unfortunately, but I have a feeling some of the sleepers or the baggage car ended up somewhere on some tourist railroad or something like that. The steam generator was most likely transferred to Via in the late 70s and scrapped sometime in the mid to late 80s after the rise of electric head-end power on engines like the F40PH. But thankfully, other CC&F, NSC, and GMD built steam gen cars have been preserved all across North America. In conclusion, the Confederation train was an amazing way of celebrating Canadian history, showing a sense of pride, youthful enthusiasm, and optimism for a better Canada. It's been said before, don't ask who because I don't know, but to create a brighter future, we gotta know our past. Yeah, I gotta work on video endings. Hey guys.